Hello, readers. Nate Ebner is a two-sport athlete who is the only person to ever compete in the Olympics as an active NFL player and then go on to win a Super Bowl. In his 10 years in the NFL, he has won 3 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots before spending the past 2 years with the New York Giants. That other sport is rugby, for which Nate represented the United States at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio. But that barely scratches the surface of Nate's story, which he has detailed in the inspiring and at times heartbreaking memoir, Finish Strong, A Father's Code and a Son's Path. Nate, thank you for the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So what was your goal with this book?
Ooh, big question. What was my goal? My goal was first and foremost to tell an authentic story, a genuine story of really just an honest take on my sports journey. Along with that, really honoring my father and the high quality parent that he was and human being that he was, but like I said, most importantly the parent that he was to me and father figure. I think that was step one, tell an honest take, a genuine take, and really honor the father that I had. After that, it was, I hope to inspire people through my journey, and a little bit out of that is out of my control because I don't know. Over the years, I've been with Ohio State and all these sports teams, and you hear all these motivational speakers, and one of the most important things to me was telling an authentic story. You hear so many people tailor their stories to try to inspire, but it just comes across so insincere, almost fake, so at least for me it was, and that was something I didn't want to do. So but I hoped that by telling my story and kind of what I went through and my mindset to get through some of the tough things, that people can relate to that, and hopefully, like I said, it inspires people to chase after things that they want for themselves, regardless of what anyone thinks about it.
Your dad, Jeff, when reading about him, struck me as a great human being and an even better dad. Personally, I love the idea of ordering dessert before the rest of the meal, but your mom and dad divorced when you were really young, Nate, but you still saw your dad nearly every day as a kid, despite him living a 2-hour round trip away. How was his commitment to you rooted in his own parent shortcomings when he was a child?
That's a good question. You know, I wasn't around when he was a kid. I don't know. I know he had divorced parents. Obviously, my grandparents were not together. But I think, maybe I can't speak to that. I can't speak for him that maybe he was, doing something he might have missed out on. I know there was times where he wasn't with his dad. And, ultimately, I think, it really just spoke to the love that he had for me as his child, and just how important I was to him for the sacrifice that he made to be there for everything. I think in layman's terms, that's what it was about, was really just him focusing on how much he loved his kid, and he wanted to be there for him, and he wanted to show that love through his presence, and always being there. And that went a long way. I can't speak to his underlying reasonings or anything like that, but he was always there, and he put in more time driving, getting to me, than we'd even spend sometimes nights together. So very dedicated father figure, and like we talked about earlier, I hope to inspire people, but I hope to inspire parents to be better parents, and really know what type of impact influences their child, and that is the time you spend with them.
Yeah, I have a 7 and 5-year-old at home, 7-year-old daughter, 5-year-old son, and I can only hope that my relationship with them is anywhere close to the one that you and your dad had. And you guys were really connected by 2 activities more than anything else, Nate: rugby and working out. What was it about rugby that connected the 2 of you?
Well, I mean, rugby was one of those things. He played rugby, so I did whatever my dad did. He was, you young kid, you just do whatever your dad does. He's Superman to you. And, but as I got older and I played rugby a lot, I actually became pretty good at it. And it was just kind of one of those things that we really enjoyed together. Towards the end of it all, I mean, I became a pretty good, skillful player. I can't really, when people talk about my dad as a rugby player, they wouldn't say like highly skilled. They would just say very violent and aggressive. And, that was his bag. That's why he liked to play. He liked to hit people. I'd say in the book, where else can you go, beat the crap out of somebody all day and not go to jail? And that was why he played rugby, and that's what he loved about it. And for me, having that same blood in my veins, I obviously had to like the physical side of it, but there was a side of rugby that I got my eyes open to through some really high quality players at a young age that made me experience the game in a way, I could argue he maybe never experienced. So it was an introduction to a sport I turned out to love, but I think, we shared the violence of it. We liked that and the scoring and the passing and the work. But at the end of it all, I would say I loved it for almost different reasons. But we both loved it. So it was fun.
Why was working out a really good metaphor for what your dad valued in life?
Because I mean, what a big question, great question. That I could answer a bunch of different ways, and I don't want to make it long-winded, but ultimately, every day you got to wake up and go to work. The work doesn't do itself. I talked about that in the book. The cars won't crush themselves. You got to go get them crushed and load the semi trucks. And the weight room was kind of the same way. If you wanted to grow, if you wanted to get stronger, you had to put the work in to do it. It wasn't, it's an accountability to, you want something in your life, you want some type of change, you have to show up every day to do it, to get the results that you want. And I think that was the biggest message. I mean, there are so many metaphors to why, working out was such a, tablet of my dad's character's values, and why they were important, working hard, not giving in. There's so many things I could talk about, but for me, the big picture one was the accountability as to, if you want to change, you want growth, you want something different, that you don't get to do it when you feel good. You don't get to do it, once a week or when everybody else is there. It's something you really want. You need to dedicate yourself to it, and you need to show up every day to get the results that you want. And that was the biggest one for me.
Your dad was really a walking motivational quote machine. You just mentioned one of them. That is, you have to want your body to be something it's not. You devote yourself to that every single day, which you just talked about. Another that really struck me as incredible is, if you can suffer through the pain, the glory will last forever. What does that mean to you?
Well, we're just hearing that, I just instantly think of the rowing machine. But it was always about putting in the work, kind of in the same way as the weight room, putting in that work and suffering in that moment of cardio. Typically that was a cardio reference, but it can be generalized into a bunch of different things. But specifically, I think of, the burn of cardio, where you can't breathe and your legs are on fire, and, you're struggling, and everything in your body is telling you to give in and to, let's pull back. You can't breathe, your legs hurt, like everything's screaming at you. But if you can suffer through those moments and finish those workouts, when he's referring to the glory, he's referring to when you get on that field, everybody else is going to be burning before you. Everybody else is their lungs are going to be burning before yours, and everyone else is going to be thinking about quitting before you will. And ultimately, that's going to give you more success on the field, which will result in glory. And that's kind of his thing, like suffer the pain now in the weight room, in the cardio sessions. If you can die for it here, then when you get on the field, there's no way anyone else is going to outlast you. And that way you'll have success, and the glory of those wins will last forever. And they do.
You've epitomized that throughout your life. Now, your dad ran a junkyard that had been in the family for 3 generations, and it eventually specialized in junked cars. How much fun was this for you to get to hang around in as a kid?
Oh yeah, the junkyard was a absolute playground for me as a child. I mean, you know, I could have my friends come up, we'd paintball, we'd shoot. I could shoot BB guns at windows and hammer cars with hammers and baseball bats, breaking windows. I mean, I had dirt bikes and go-karts. We'd go around. It just really great place for me to keep me busy. And half the time I didn't even need any friends. I would just busy myself with the dirt bikes or beating up cars. And it was ultimately a a playground for me. Just when I think back on it, it was like really normal in my mind. But then, when I really think back on it, and all the other kids around me, they lived in suburban neighborhoods or whatever, and they go play ball with their friends and go back home. Maybe jumped on a trampoline in their backyard. And I just was out there like craziness. But what a great place for me to expel energy, to stay distracted by good things, to stay active. And then ultimately that playground turned into a transition of like a place of work. And like we spoke about, accountability, character, some discipline, hard work ethic, those types of things came into play as I got of age. My dad wasn't going to let me just have a free lunch and play around the whole time. Eventually it was you got to contribute a little bit here. So it turned into that. But what a great place for me and for him, and really just the upbringing that I had.
Dude, what is it that's so incredible about just breaking a window?
I
Loved
don't
it
know.
as a kid, and I mean, I don't go out or go around breaking many windows as an adult, but I've had
Yeah,
the occasional opportunity to do so. It's just so satisfying.
I was just gonna say it's one of those oddly satisfying things. Once it's broke though. It's that's not something you can fix. It's got to be replaced. Yeah, or just taking a baseball bat or hammer and just putting a massive dent in the side of a perfectly good car. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It was
Ooh,
fun.
I haven't done that yet. I may have to try that next week. So your dad never really got angry or yelled at you, which let me tell you, as a parent of a 7-5-year-old, that is a difficult task. But when he punished you, man, did it hurt. What were the consequences you faced for getting caught slingshotting rocks and acorns at passing cars around the age of 12 or 13?
Yeah, that was one of the few times I got in trouble pretty good. But no, yeah, like you said, he wasn't a big screamer. If he started to get calm and soft spoken, that's when you get nervous. He was one of those types. Instead of the rage, it was almost focused energy, and that was almost scarier. Um, but yeah, I remember, like you said, some cars got hit with some slingshots with some rocks and stuff, and basically got caught. And my dad was like, pretty upset about it, but he was like, "All right, this is what we're gonna do." He sent me outside, gave me some construction paper scissors, for like a kindergarten kid or something, and he's like, "I want you to cut the cut the grass in the backyard." And I just looked at him. He's like, "Yep, get to work." So I just had to get on my hands and knees, and I'm just like sitting there with scissors. I probably got like a couple laps around the whole yard in like 2 or 3 hours, and he was like, "All right, that's enough of that." Then I had to go run some sprints. I had to get the cleats on, and we went to a couple different hills in Springfield, our famous hill running sessions that were typically by choice. And yeah, it wasn't like of like forced punishment, but it was like typically when we would run hills, I would choose to do it. But I remember the one time he was like, "We're gonna run hills as punishment right now," so, and that was a fun time. Well, as fun as it could be. The water tower, um, Penn Street Hill. We hit 3 different spots in Springfield, hit a couple of them, and he really drug out the whole day where I just didn't get to have fun. I'm on my hands and knees, I'm running sprints, and just thinking about what I did wrong all day long. But once it was over with, he was the type of person like, we're done with it. Let's put it behind us. But he was creative when it came to punishments. That's for sure.
I'm assuming you never threw another rock or acorn at a passing
Never
car.
again. I didn't do it again.
So
I'm never doing it again. That's good.
So back to the junkyard. Dealing with robbers and thieves was the biggest problem that y'all had to deal with there. How did your dad handle these scumbags?
With citizens justice, I guess you could call it. He would always say, I have to make a citizen's arrest. But it was brutal. I would say, if you were stealing from us and it was one of the days we were going to search for robbers, that was a mistake for some of those guys. I mean, he would unleash quite a bit of force on them, and I would definitely say it was excessive. But I mean, you're stealing, so who are they going to believe, And he tried to. It wasn't almost like just mad at whatever guy's stealing. It was almost to send a message to everyone that comes in here: if you steal, this is the result that it's going to be for you. And we would the yard was your typical 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. And when it closed, that's when the scumbags would come out. We knew when they'd be there. We knew where the holes in the yard were. Instead of patching up the holes in the yard and the fence where people could get in, he left them. So he knew there was only a place or two they could escape from, and we knew where they were. And he used it to his advantage. And we would, we'd put the cleats on. We'd stretch a little bit. I'd go one way, he'd go the other. I'd make a bunch of noise and ask them what they're doing in the yard, and then they'd take off running, and they ran the wrong way into him. So yeah, it got it got pretty aggressive. But that's how he handled it. Springfield's wasn't a great area. It's, you could call the police, they weren't going to do anything. They weren't worried about people stealing alternators or whatever they were stealing, windshield wipers. Who knows what they were stealing, right? I mean, the police didn't. There were bigger issues in Springfield, Ohio, than some thieves in the junkyard. So he handled it the way he wanted to handle it, and that's what we did. Chasing robbers was kind of like a weekend thing on Sundays, especially if we didn't play rugby. So
quite the Sunday ritual. How did the two words "it's fine" explain your dad so well?
Why? Because that was his mindset about pretty much everything in life. The concept of worrying. I'd say, especially nowadays, you think about the way people flood themselves with worry and concern over things out of their control, or things that just really don't matter that much. It's like crying about the rain. He was like, whatever it is, it's fine. It'll be fine. As soon as someone started to worry, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And just really the idea behind, in a way, it was stoic, the stoicism idea of control what you can control, and things out of your control, to sit and worry about them was a waste of energy. And he would just, it's fine. I think at the same time, it shows the depth of the human that is there for the meaning of things in life, and the relationships, not the superficial, what it looks like or how things appear aesthetically. Those things don't matter in the grand scheme of things, and the depth and the connection that you have with whatever it is that you're doing in life. If the car starts and gets you from A to B, it's fine. It did its job. End goal is to get you there. And it's just a simple way of thinking, but it was applied to everything. And again, very, very clear as a young, observant kid to this man whose everything was fine when he would say it. you'd think in society as a kid, I'd look at some instances where I'd be like, this isn't fun, the the air conditioner doesn't work and we're, it's hot outside or something, or some scenario where you would think society would say this isn't fine, but he would be like, no, it is fine. It'll do just fine. We're tubing on instead of like a real inner tube in the reservoir, we're tubing on some tire tube he got from the junkyard, and he clamped it with a rope, and we're hanging on basically 5% of our body on the tube, the rest of it in the water. It's fun. And just gave you that perspective of life, of what's important and what's not really. And that became very clear to me at a young age as to where to focus my energy and my concerns with things that I could influence, the things that I could change, the things that do matter, which is like the work I put in, how I treat people, the respect I give to others and to certain things, I could go on and on about that, the discipline and accountability I have in my own life towards what matters to me, not what's my outfit look like and are my shoes cool enough. Learned that very early on, because all of that stuff it's fun.
So as you mentioned a little bit earlier, you became a really good rugby player as a team. So when and why did you decide to transition to football, a sport that you had not played since 8th grade?
I decided to transition to football right after the fall season of my sophomore year in college. I had just finished my final junior World Cup with the USA under 20s. And that was in Wales in 2008. And I played fall rugby at Ohio State. And after playing so much international rugby and then going back to playing club rugby, I wanted more. I wanted to see, what levels I could reach athletically. And, I didn't have a professional future in rugby in the United States, and I didn't want to live in a different country. I had a couple more years of college left, and I knew I was going to still be here or in the United States. And, it was kind of the perfect storm. I wanted to play football my senior year in high school. I chose not to because of the Junior World Cups. My high school team went on to win the Division I state championship. Went to Ohio State. In itself is one of the meccas of, them in Alabama, the meccas of football in this country. All you do is hear about Ohio State football this, Ohio State football that, and it just got old to me. I'm stuck in this rugby rut, if you will, where I don't see a future, but athletically, I know I'm athletic. I'm playing against the best rugby players in the world. So I'm like, F it. Let's go play football at Ohio State. And that was actually the last conversation I had with my father before he passed, was about me walking on to the football team at Ohio State. And ultimately I went that direction, kind of with his blessing, but really because of that perfect storm of a scenario that just made me want to seek more for myself. And even with all the naysayers and people that thought that was crazy or whatever, I didn't really care, because I believed in myself and I wanted to find out.
How did Jeff take to your football idea?
A lot better than I thought he would. It was very positive. I think he could tell I was extremely serious about it. It wasn't just kind of like, hey, Dad, I think I want to play football. Like, what do you think about that? It was kind of like, I've been thinking about this a long time. This is kind of what my rugby path looks like right now. It's not very palatable to me. And this is kind of, I'm at Ohio State. Why not? And ultimately he was really well received and enthusiastic. And he was kind of like, Nate, if you're going to do this, do it all the way. Don't try to kind of play rugby in the off seasons, or it's just give everything you have to football and see what you can do with it. And, I told him, I think if I could play at Ohio State, I knew if I could play at Ohio State, I could play in the NFL. I mean, it was like all these people play in the NFL from these different schools, but Ohio State, like I said, Ohio State, Alabama, there's just a couple that, if you could play there, just is so competitive, you could play in the NFL. And I had mentioned that to him, that, that was the ultimate goal. And I think, after that conversation, he, like I said, it was well received. He was on board. He was supportive of it. His thing was just, if you're going to do it all the way. Don't try to dip your toe in and kind of stay with rugby at the same time. Let's just give everything you have to it. Rugby will always be there if football doesn't work out. And so I did. But the next day is when he was, attacked at the yard. So.
Yeah, it's tragic. Attacked at the yard, ends up in a coma in the hospital. You actually make it to see him in that comatose state, and then he died the very next day. Nate, I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that, but no, it's that was tough. That was tough. That put me in a dark spot. I sit here, I write a book about my dad, my relationship with this person that obviously I idolize, but it's not just a normal father-son relationship. I mean, I'd put our relationship up against anyone's. It was such a bond. It was more than a friendship. It was more than a father-son love. It was both times 10. And as a young man, your foundation, your rock, the one person in your life that's more important than any one thing or any one other person out there, or all of it combined, is gone. And now, and gone in a way that no one should lose anyone, might I add. That kind of derailed me for some time. I ended up dropping out of school for that semester or quarter, I think we were in at the time. And really, I tried to keep going, but couldn't focus, and I was in a very bad place for some time until, I don't know if you want me to elaborate on that, but my mom was, my saving grace. And again, comes back to the parents doing what they have to do. But that was probably the biggest moment in my life. I was close to going down a really dark path. Kind of starting to feel sorry for myself. Didn't understand it, not really moving forward anymore, just stuck in this repeated cycle of, you wake up, you think about your dad, he's gone, then you think about everything that's happened, and then it's just a bad place to be. But my mom came in one day to me after probably 3 or 4 weeks of just moping around, and she was in tears, just trying to get the words out of her mouth to say to me, Nate, you can't keep living like this. And your dad wouldn't want to see you like this. He'd want to see you live a life that he would be proud of, that you would be proud of. And he wouldn't want to see your whole life get ruined because he's not there anymore. As hard as that is for me to say, as she said, like, you need to get on with it because he would want you to get on with it. And you can't let this derail your whole life. Like, he wouldn't want that for you. So you got to live a life that he'd be proud of. And, for her to say that to me in that moment, was probably the biggest moment in my life. It took a lot of strength, not only as a mother, but as a woman who, who's got a tough, son who plays sports and works out with his dad and chases robbers for a living. She had to get me going in the right direction. And I'm just so thankful for that moment, and that I have such a strong mother in my life, because I allude to this in the book, that I have other friends who lost parents and lost things, and things went bad in their life. And, they didn't have that strength of a figure in their life to say, I know this sucks. I empathize with you. I sympathize for everything you're going through, but we need to get on with it. And when we got to find a way to go forward. And, I just think about some of those other situations with those kids where they just had parents who coddled them and comforted them because they just couldn't stand to see their child in the pain. So they just did what they thought would make them feel good. And, I had a mom who said, it's not about that. It's about the rest of his life. And just, again, I'm so grateful for that. And, to wrap up this long-winded answer, I to live a life he would be proud of. That was something that always stuck with me I lost him at 19, a month before my 20th birthday. To that point, we were kind of best friends. And I really thought that my mindset changed in that moment, was that how lucky was I to have such a great human being, such a great father figure, such a great man to lead me every day, to teach me how to be a man. And I had him until I was 19. I was developed. The last few years, I wish I had more. I wish I had him now. But those last few years, we were just kind of best friends. I was about to be 20. I was, coming into being a man. I know people who lost parents at 6, at 13, right when they need a man more than ever in their life. I had him all the way up there. I was so grateful that the amount of time he packed into those 19 years together and 11 months together that we had. I have more life with him than people whose parents lived to be 80 something, so I was just very grateful for who he was to me, and having him for as long as I did. And I just chose to be grateful. Ultimately, it was the mindset to be grateful for what I had, understand it, appreciate it, and just be genuinely grateful for it. And that that helped me move forward.
Beautiful answer there. Thank you for that. And by the way, two of my favorite sentences in this book are, my dad was the co-founder of my spirit. My mom relit it. Now, once you did have that conversation with you, you picked yourself up, you refocused on that goal of walking on at Ohio State and eventually living out those NFL dreams. You busted your ass for several weeks before walk-on tryouts at Ohio State. What were those walk-on workouts like, Nate?
Yeah, those walk-on workouts at Ohio State were some of the toughest things that I've ever done. I mean, to this day, obviously training for the Olympics was hard. Playing in the NFL for 10 years, we did some hard things. But even the 3 years at Ohio State, we did hard stuff. But those were walk-on workouts. They were there to break you, to make you quit, to really see if you wanted to be a Buckeye, if you wanted to be on this football team. Did you just want to put the jersey on so you could tell your friends? Because these were too hard to go through if not, if you weren't about really helping this team. And it was 2 weeks right after the walk-on tryout. They probably picked like 15 or so guys. I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but something like that. 15 or so guys got selected. So we had 2 weeks of workouts. One of the more daunting things I remember were the walking lunges. I think I spoke about in the book, where we had started on one sideline of the football field, and we had to, every step had to be a lunge. And I had 60 and 70 pound dumbbells. We had 50 to 70 pound dumbbells, and we had one in each hand, and we had to do a lunge every step all the way across the field and back, and no one could drop a dumbbell. And I just remember doing those, and I kept getting like halfway across and back, and someone would drop one, and we all had to start over. And we had to start over like 2 or 3 times. And then I got to the point where I just kind of like gathered everyone. I was like, look, I'm going to get all the way across and back. And if you feel like you're going to drop it, just like sit into a squat and hold them on your thighs. Just don't drop the dumbbells. Like, I'm going to finish, and then I'm going to come. Like, no one said I couldn't hold the dumbbells for you. So, me and another guy that were able to do that, we got it done. And then we would run out and like hold the dumbbells so people could shake their arms out. And, the coaches were kind of like, oh, we didn't say they couldn't do that. And that got us through. But Dude, I could remember I couldn't walk after that. That was such a monstrous. I mean, we probably did 3 or 4 sets of across and back with 70-pound dumbbells in each hand. I mean, that's just ridiculous amount of lunges.
Dude,
But yeah, it was crazy stuff.
that sounds like hell just doing farmers walks across the field and back, much less having to add lunges into the whole thing.
Yeah, it was one of those things you go, there's no way we're going to be able to do this. And it's almost like they sat in a room and were like, what can we think of that they definitely won't be able to do? Because like even thinking about it now, I did it and I still am like, I just don't know how. You just do one step at a time and you just keep going one step at a time. And eventually like you do it. But I just that was crazy. That was a crazy one. But sorry. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff like that to try to break your will and really, and we did that for 2 weeks. We did crazy stuff like that for 2 weeks. And they just, by the time we were done, there were about, I think, 4 to 6 of us left. And there were 15 or so plus going into those workouts. And, that was just to make the team so we could practice and work out with the rest of the team. And then once we were there, then you had to go actually play football. And, through that got whittled down. I mean, by the time we made it to fall, there were about 2 or 3 guys that, made it through the actual walk-on process to the fall, and we're standing on the sideline or whatever, playing in the games. And, it's different than being a preferred walk-on. Most walk-ons you hear, they're a walk-on, they're a preferred walk-on. They basically come in like a scholarship athlete. They're treated like a scholarship athlete. They're just not on scholarship. But everything about them is treated as if they were a normal player. We were the scum of the earth walk-ons that, came from the street and we wanted to play. And they were like, well, we're going to make this as impossibly hard for you to make it here as we can. And if you do make it through, you probably won't even play. You'll just be fodder. And that's just, those football programs are machines, man. They're recruiting high school kids, 5-star recruits. They're trying to win national championships. They're not worried about the next walk-on from the street that's going to somehow impact that program. I mean, multi-million-dollar program where there's recruiting and scouting and all this stuff. And they don't have plans for the rugby kid who decides to come in and see what he can do with the team. So. What an experience, though.
Navy SEALs have Hell Week. Apparently, the Ohio State walk-on program has Hell off season, right?
Absolutely.
So the title of this book, Finish Strong, played an important role in you truly becoming a part of the Buckeye program. Why was this, and what do those 2 words mean to you, Nate?
Finish strong?
Yes.
Well, I mean, to answer that first, finish strong was kind of one of those, you mentioned earlier, my dad was like a walking book of quotes, and finish strong was one that kind of stuck with me. Right before he died, we had done a workout in the athletic club in Columbus, and it was a rowing workout, and it was one of those, it kind of went along with that. If you can suffer the pain, the glory lasts forever. That it went with that quote because we were doing cardio on the rower, and his thing when I was going was just, he'd bark finish in my ear, finish strong, finish strong. He would will me through it. And those were words he would often say in those very difficult moments of grind when we were in those workouts. And they were, his words, but it was something that kind of became, my voice, my words, but it was really something he instilled in me that he would always say. But it was so fresh after he died that when I gave his eulogy at the funeral, that was kind of one of the stories I told, was about him saying finish strong to me, and how he used it in workouts, and how, essentially I'm going to use those words to finish this journey in life as strong as I can, because I only get one chance. And then after that eulogy, my aunt got me this bracelet with Finish Strong inscribed on it, and I just kind of wore it everywhere. And like I said, it was something he said to me, but when I went to those workouts at Ohio State, when I was, doing anything, I could look down and feel like he was there with me, talking to me. So yeah, Finish Strong started out as some words to inspire through those last gritty moments of a burning set of cardio or some type of workout, and then turned into a pretty strong metaphor for what I set out to do, and really life, you know. Um, I'll just leave it at that. Forget what else you asked me. Ohio State, something about Ohio State.
Yeah, it was about how that helped you become an integral part of the team. But you know what? People can pick this book up to read that story. It is another really cool story in this book. So,
I'll say I know what you're getting at, and basically, I was new to the team. When I walked on, I didn't talk much to people, but I took, we had a couple L's, and Coach Tressel wanted us to find an answer. And I asked Coach Tressel if I could speak to the team, and I actually shared that Finish Strong story just 6 months after my dad had passed, not even. And I got up in front of the whole team after the walk-on workouts, and kind of trying to earn my stripes, and kind of, shared my heart, shared what it meant to me, and kind of was vulnerable to the team of what I had been going through. And yeah, that was nice that I could share that. That brotherhood was huge for me going through what I was going through, to be able to lean on Ohio State, and have a place to go focus all that negative energy and put it towards, grinding and something positive. I'll always be grateful to have that place at that time in my life, because had I not had something that required so much of me, so much focus, so much presence, like in the present moment, to be able to have success there. Because if you're not present at Ohio State, you aren't going to have any success. And I'm so grateful I had that place during what I was going through, because it was a time where I could really escape these constant thoughts about, my reality, which was my dad being gone. And um it was a good escape, and it was put towards great energy, and then it almost made me think about him still, but in such a positive way, and in the ways where he was always present with me, and I could have him in those moments. It was so, I'm just so thankful that I had Ohio State football at that time.
to say you made the most of that opportunity might be the understatement of the year. You were pretty much integral in every aspect of Ohio State's special teams units throughout your time in Columbus. Eventually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were a captain on the team your senior year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was like, we did vice captains and stuff, but for the most part, I was doing it quite a bit. So
You end up carrying the flag out of the tunnel to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of September 11th. Another great bit of writing in this book that I highly recommend people check out. And eventually, you're so good as a special teamer, despite the fact that I think you only played 3 true defensive snaps throughout your college career, and you did a great job at Pro Day as well, that you end up getting drafted by the New England Patriots in the 6th round at pick 197, which is almost unheard of for a guy who is almost exclusively special teams. And sure enough, you make the roster after that, and you end up in New England for 8 years, winning 3 Super Bowls in the process before moving on to the Giants. Early on in your time with the Patriots, Nate, your special teams coach, Scotty O'Brien, told you, Ebner, you don't know what you don't know. What does this mean to you?
Well, I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard at first, and every time I hear someone say something along those lines, I think of him. But um, you know, what does it mean to me? I mean, it's simply that you don't know what you don't know. If you've never driven a car before, and then you get behind the wheel of a car, how would you know how to drive it? Like, you just don't know things that you don't know. And that was his point, was in reference to being in the NFL, playing football at that level, the detail involved. We sit there and, as a veteran, you look at all the mistakes rookies make, but they don't know what they don't know. They've never played at that level. They haven't done some of those things in regards to football, and you need to make mistakes in some cases to learn. And if not that, you need to learn from other people's mistakes. And it was just it was always the thing he'd say to me as a rookie. I just remember it was his favorite thing to say to rookies, but it was just, looking back on it as a veteran and someone who played a while, it's so true. And it's so true in life. I mean, there's, so many people go about life in their own way, and who's to tell them how to do it? But, without experience, how can you not only speak on something, but how could you even understand it at all? Because you have zero experience of it. And from a life perspective, you don't know what you don't know makes me want to experience more things so that maybe I have a better understanding, and I'm well-rounded as a human being, because I have more experiences, and I can fall back on that to describe or understand different things and different perspectives and different things about life. So that was one that always stuck with me.
So in the middle of a successful NFL career, you decide that you want to try rugby again, this time for the United States in the 2016 Rio Olympics. Where did that decision come from?
That one was brewing. I mean, while I'm doing this whole football journey in the background, uh, the Olympics is adding rugby to the Olympics. They're trying to get that passed, and I'm always keeping an eye on it. But obviously, I was playing football, so I was busy with that. But I think it was in 2014 or something. It was for sure in, and we knew for certain it was going to happen, and that 2016 was going to be the first Olympics. And from that moment on, I mean, it was from 2008. It was kind of talked about. It was always like back there, but once it was solidified, and I think what happened in 2014 was the USA qualified for the Olympics, and at that point, I knew USA was going to field a team in the Olympics in 2016. That was overwhelming for me. Ultimately, I chose to go do that because I didn't really have a choice. If I'm not really one who believes in fate, then you look at my story and you're like, how can you not? But the one thing I really think about is that rugby experience in the Olympics when I think about fate, because rugby hadn't been in the Olympics since like 1924. We're talking 90 some years prior. I'm 26, 27 years old. I'm in the prime of my athletic career. I just so happened to have played rugby my whole life. So I was really good at it, even though I've been playing in the NFL, but I still knew how to play rugby. I was able to transition quicker because I had played rugby my whole life. It gets into the Olympics, like I said, right in my athletic prime. The USA qualifies when we weren't even supposed to qualify. And, I just, sorry, I had to do it. I was coming up on a new contract. I had done my rookie contract with the Patriots, and Bill reached out to start negotiating another contract before free agency hit. And, we got through all that. And I said to Bill, though, at the end, I said, Bill, like, look, I need to go do this. This is just something that I have to do. From 2014 when we qualified, all I did in meetings was think about when I needed time away from football, I'd daydream about playing rugby in the Olympics. And ultimately the decision was finalized because the thought process for me was, if I told my dad I'd go play football at Ohio State and I want to make the NFL. I made it. I played out my entire rookie year. Um, I had won a Super Bowl. If I never play football again, I'll live. It's been more than I ever thought it was, or would be. But if I don't do this rugby in the Olympics, and I don't get this opportunity again, every day I live the rest of my life, I might sit and question why I didn't do it or what it would have been like had I done it. And that was something that I don't do well with. I don't do well with things that keep me up at night. Knowing I tried and didn't make it, fine with me. I'll sleep just fine. There's a bunch of other good athletes out there, and there's, you know, hell, if I give it everything I have and it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I can sleep well at night knowing I did everything I could. So just knowing that, I'd have to live the rest of my life wondering what it would have been like, I couldn't do that. And that was the ultimate pusher. So when we were negotiating that contract, I finished with Bill saying, look, this is something I've got to do. I got to go try to make this. Bill knew they drafted a rugby player. They knew all about me, and he wasn't surprised. And ultimately, right away, Bill was super supportive. Go ahead, we'll be here. I figured, look, if this is something you can't handle as a coach, I totally understand. It's not, it's a violent sport. If we need to talk about a contract when I get back, that's fine. But, right away, he was supportive. Mr. Kraft, the Patriot organization, was supportive, so supportive of me doing that. And it was phenomenal. Bill did end up calling me back, though, and saying, hey, we need to put something in your contract. There's it's not like you're just going sailing. I remember him saying it just like that. So, yeah, but ultimately I had to go forward and do that. And it worked out.
It's not surprising that he gave you his blessing, considering the passion that he has for a sport other than football with lacrosse too.
Right. Well, and more so to that point, I think he's a very patriotic person. Loves the Navy, dad involved with the Navy, armed forces, knows everything about every American holiday. I mean, he is a historian for sure. And but a patriotic American as much as the next guy. And he he knew what rugby meant to me, and it was as, going to play for your country is as patriotic as it gets. And he was all about it. And when Bill's about it, everybody else kind of falls in line as well. So I'm glad he was.
Yeah, so that was just the start of you getting back into rugby. You detail in the book going through tryouts, the adjustments of going from football back into rugby, the Yaka yards, which is something people want to read about. But eventually you do make the team, Nate. You get to compete in Rio in 2016. How did it feel getting to take part in the opening ceremonies that year before the games themselves got going?
That was a really cool experience. When you play football, you just kind of go to the stadium, you play in the game, you do your warm up, you play in the game, and you go home, and that's what it's about. But to be at this festival, where all these countries around the world come, and we're there for the couple weeks before or a week before our competition, and then there's this massive celebration of everyone getting there. What a cool thing. I'll never forget, for me, the opening ceremonies. You walk in and you hear the different countries announced, and the whole stadium cheers and whatever. But when we came in as the United States, in a different country, on a different continent, speaking a different language than the people of Brazil, and you heard the roar that we heard when the USA was announced. For me, it just hit hard, because, like you said, I carried out the flag in the 9/11 when I was at Ohio State, the 10-year anniversary, and I'm patriotic as well. But when I'm across the country or across the world, if you will, in a different hemisphere, and these people who don't know us at all are cheering for us. They're not cheering for us individually, they're cheering for what we represent for the United States of America. And that sits with me like, this is what you represent. You live in the greatest country in the world, and you're representing that, and you're a part of that. And none of these people know you, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs. I mean, it was a roar in that building, just based on solely on what we represent as a nation. That's awesome, and that makes me very grateful for where I do live and what I did represent in those Olympics. And that was a special moment that was something that imprinted on me that will not ever leave me for the rest of my life. That was very, very chilling experience, if you will, to say the least.
And even though you and your teammates fell short of your goal of medaling in those Olympics, it was still really cool to learn how that experience carried over to your next NFL season. The one time you were all pro as an NFL player, You guys also won another Super Bowl that year, that incredible comeback over the Falcons in the Super Bowl. A couple more questions, Nate. You played this last year with the New York Giants. Your season ended prematurely because of an injury. Are you retired for the NFL now, or are you hoping to get back into things for 22?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a big social media, person on there all the time, telling everybody what I'm doing all the time. I'm too busy living life. But I am probably done playing football. I played 10 years. I'm 33. I'm at this point, I'm so much older than everybody else that I'm playing with. It feels weird. I don't know how Tom still interacts with his teammates, but no, I played a long time. I think at this point, um, it's just really, it's my body. It's not really my choice anymore. Even this last year, it was probably the hardest year of my career physically, just trying to get myself in a place to play. And then obviously, I only made it about halfway through the season. I've just, at this point, there's no more tread on the tires. There's, I'm running on the rims, and, I've had to have some surgeries to kind of clean that up. And, I ran it into the ground, as my dad would say, right, empty the tank. And I feel like I definitely did. And then some. It's questionable if I even should have played this last year, but from a physical standpoint, I think my body's had enough. Hopefully, I get recovered as I can. But, at the end of the day, I never dreamed I'd play 10 years in the NFL. When we sit here and talk about this story, I was just hoping to get my foot in the door, and then I got drafted, and then, just play a couple years, hopefully get through my rookie contract. And, I was going to play rugby in the Olympics, so I might never play football again, and then you just look back, and 10 years later, I played a decade. I was, captain, and all those years with New England, just more than I ever could have dreamed it would be. And, I've, at this point, like I said, it doesn't feel like it's my choice anymore. It's, body's had enough, and I'm totally at peace with that. I never really identified as a football player. You look at my story, I was this rugby walk-on kid, and whenever I played football, I was a rugby guy. Then when I went back to the Olympics, I was the football guy. So I just never really identified as any of that. So I guess I identify as a capable person that when I put my mind to something, I can achieve it, and I believe it to my core, and that's who I am, whether it's sports or anything else. And that's my identity. And not playing football anymore, what the friendships, the brotherhoods I've been a part of, the teammates, the fans, my family who supported me, it's been a great ride. But it's time for the next chapter, no doubt. And I'm, like I said, I'm totally at peace with that.
All right. Thank you for that answer there, Nate. And last question. You expressed an interest at the end of this book and possibly wanting to become a father at some point, to try and pass along a love for your children that your dad was able to give to you. Do you still feel that way about things?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have kids one day. I'm not in a position where I have them right now, but I would love to have kids one day to really just kind of replicate, or try to, replicate what my father did for me. If I could give 50% of what he gave to me, I think it would be more than enough. And I could just, I've strived my whole life as a person to live up to the character and stuff that he taught me. And I'd be working just as hard to be half the dad that he was to me. And hopefully one day I do have the opportunity to try to implement not only the, parenting that he did as best as I can, but, be honored and lucky enough to have a relationship that's, like I said, half as close as I was to him, maybe one day with my own child. So that's something I'm hopeful for. And, hopefully that's in the near future. We'll see.
Well, best of luck to that. He is Nate Ebner. The new book is Finish Strong, A Father's Code and a Son's Path. Get it now in paperback. Nate, thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for this beautiful book.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, man. I hope, like I said, I hope everybody enjoys it, and maybe they can take a small bit from it, whether, you're a person striving to achieve something, or you're just a parent trying to look to be a better a better figure in your child's life, or just a better person. And it's just my story, and I hope people read it and feel the authenticity and genuineness of it all, and I hope they enjoy it. It's a cool story.
Well, it definitely impacted this dad of two in that latter manner, Nate. So thank you so much for that, man.
Appreciate it. Yep, no worries.
Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. And thank you to Joshua Bates for the video editing. If you have any video editing needs, hit him up on Instagram at Forager Digital. And thanks as always to you for checking us out. You can watch, listen, learn, and connect for free at booksonpod.com. For Books on Pod, I'm Trey Elling. Good day.